What it do, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by Flo Rida. Basically, this album is called Mail on Sunday, and it came out in the late winter of 2008. So this album is particularly notable just for the hit single Low, which crested between like late 2007 and like the winter of 2008. It was just a number one single for about 10 weeks. Did really excellent. It's one of the definitive songs of like the 2000s decade, despite the fact of how late in the decade it came out. It was just an overall smash and just really did a great job. And the thing about it is I kind of remember some of this, but I just don't remember other airplay songs from this album. They played Low so much around my local area and that type of stuff that I just never really heard the other singles like In the Air and Elevator and some of those type ones. But they did apparently chart, and this is kind of the concept that this album is pretty much in a lot of ways shoehorned just for the sheer success of Low, but I feel like it does have quite a bit of quality on here. Besides that, it was just kind of the concept that because it had such a massive number one, I definitely don't feel like this album is a one hit wonder, but I think the sheer probably majority of folks when they think back to this album probably refer to Low and that type of stuff. But there is some other stuff. It's just kind of the concept that it there's not really any other number ones on here. There is at least one other top 10 single, but in terms of like a number 2 single, a number 4 single, something like that, this doesn't really sheerly kind of have it. But it's not to say this is a bad album. So I just look after it. Flo Rida was he was kind of an interesting valve that he came into just because Nelly was starting to dry up a bit. I mean, Nelly was kind of starting to disintegrate after like his hit single Grills. So after like 2006, early 2007, it was kind of like, well, where's Nelly and that type of stuff. Nelly wasn't coming back to form. He did drop some stuff in late 2007 that didn't pan out, but Flo Rida came out of nowhere, and he was basically like the new pop rap kind of rapper as far as that kind of went. So it was basically like Flo Rida was like the replacement to Nelly from like the late 2000s to like the mid 2010s, and he had a replacement. Flo Rida kind of wore out after about 2015, early 2016, and then someone replaced him who I can't really think of at this stage. But he had quite the creative run, definitely a lot of hit albums. He definitely capitalized on that EDM movement, but this album doesn't really have that EDM sound as much. This album doesn't have that EDM sound as much. It just has like a lot of glitzy kind of nightclub bops, just a more kind of commercial and kind of contemporary version of the stuff that like Rocco and Rick Ross and Jeezy were kind of doing throughout early 2008, some of that type of stuff. I actually like the fact that how litty and how nightlife oriented that Flo Rida is kind of on this project. It's pretty awesome. I feel like all of the singles kind of have that fare about it. There's just some good kind of overall aspects, and I would definitely kind of say that this is just a bout of fun. This just really has some engaging kind of fun on here. It's just a great debut. I would definitely have to say, just for this sheer kind of quality this soon. It's interesting, just kind of the fact that, just thinking about like June of 2007, August of 2007, no one really knew who Flo Rida was, but just within like between like October 2007 and March of 2008 when this album came out, he just blew up out of nowhere and had the hits to back it up. So that's just kind of the thing about it. But I look after it like there were three singles on this album, and there were three singles on this album. The first single was Low, which has T-Pain on the hook. And like I said, this was a massive kind of hit single. It was number one for 10 weeks and was just one of the definitive songs of 2008 and the 2000s decade. It was just all over the place, inescapable hook. It's just really a glitzy kind of club gem with like a brilliant hook, and it's very vanilla nowadays. I would have to say it's a 2000s era staple, but it's just this song has been so overplayed. It's still a classic tune to refer back to when you think of like 2000s kind of fare and retro kind of throwback kind of fare as far as that kind of goes. So I just would say it's very vanilla kind of gem. It's just kind of essential when you think of like a nightclub. If you're thinking of someone from like the younger millennial set, something like that, this is a song that you would refer back to just because of its sheer popularity. The apple bottom jeans, boots with the fur, that type of stuff, just as far as that kind of went. It's just kind of the concept that it's pretty central. I just would have to say great song, great beat on there, just kind of this real kind of syrupy beat as far as that kind of goes. It's an easy hit. T-Pain did an excellent job. This was back when T-Pain was a true master of getting these hooks out and just being the hit man and that type of stuff as far as that kind of went. But Elevator is the second single, and this is another good look just because Flo Rida capitalized on another cat that was kind of huge around this time, which was Timbaland. He was really doing well between like mid 2006 and like mid 2008. He lasted for quite a while between hooking up with like Nelly Furtado, Justin Timberlake, One Republic, some of those type folks. So Timbaland kind of had a pretty lengthy run as far as that kind of went. He even dropped a couple albums throughout the late 2000s and such. But this is a good song. This is kind of an extra hit. This is a song that, despite the fact that it was a top 20 single, I just don't really hear this song get that much airplay. And it's too bad that rhythmic radio doesn't pick up some songs like this. They just kind of tend, with so many hits nowadays, they just kind of tend to play like the number ones and the number twos and maybe like the number threes, but not much out of the range of like top 5 singles. And this is an excellent song. I mean, this is easily kind of a glitzy hit, despite the fact that it doesn't seem to get like a lot of airplay. And even when I look it up on Spotify, it's not quite as popular as In the Air, but I kind of feel like it's still a pretty relatively glitzy kind of gem. It's a nice, riveting, kind of getting ready to get crunk kind of song, I definitely feel like. And it's just an early kind of club bop for just getting there and just kind of the entry type stuff of just the dap and that type of stuff, the initial kind of pounds and just kind of initializing as far as that kind of goes and that sort of concept. Just kind of has, like, it's not as glitzy a beat as like Low or In the Air is, but I kind of feel like it's just got a nice kind of particular spark to it that just kind of, it has 2 separate beats in there, like verses 1 and 3 kind of have a more kind of just riveting, kind of bubbling, kind of pounding kind of beat, and then in verse 2 it kind of has like a more sparkly kind of electronic kind of club type fare about it. But it's just kind of a nice one. It's just one where you just are starting with like your first and second beer, that type of stuff, or maybe just heading to VIP, some of those type of sessions are just the easy kind of, it's just very relaxed kind of in the format. It's not quite a full-blown party starter, but it's just kind of like a bubbler for getting ready to do that. So I appreciate this song more than I did in the past, but it's just kind of a very overlooked song by Flo Rida that could definitely stand to get some more airplay. So In the Air is the 3rd single, and this is a great song. I really like this one. Pretty close to how much I like Low. I would definitely say I didn't listen to this song a lot back in the day, but now that I think about it, it is a pretty glitzy kind of gem. It's kind of a song that crested in like the spring of 2008, but it still felt like the promotion of this album just wrapped up entirely quickly. I just don't understand why this album, when you think of it, is just massively kind of portioned to the song Low, and then just the other singles were just kind of usurped like entirely, I just would have to say. But In the Air has a pretty pounding, kind of sparky kind of beat. This really kind of a pounding one. will.i.am is another cat that was kind of bopping around this time, and he did a pretty good job with this. He helped him out, really gave him a pretty nice type song that pretty much could have been like a Black Eyed Peas kind of hit in some cases. It was the stuff that they were getting ready to do in 2009. It's kind of an early preview to that. In the Air is kind of a sports game pound. In the Air is kind of a sports game pounder. Definitely feel like this is one you can listen to it like a football game, something like that. Just a nice kind of tipsy song. I would feel like good song to have some drinks in your system too. And it's kind of an out and about kind of jive. This is definitely one where just not so much like nightclub, just hanging out at a booth, stuff like that, but just kind of more jive of just being, maybe it doesn't have to be summer weather, but just kind of more festive, kind of just appreciating like the outdoors, seeing some clouds, that type of stuff. Is this kind of more appreciation of the outdoors, but still kind of around people, I would have to say, as far as that kind of goes. So there are 14 songs on this album, and out of those 14, I wound up recommending to you 10. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend those 10 songs. So they'd be In the Air, Low, Elevator, Don't Know How to Act, Money Right, Roll, American Superstar, Miss Hangover, Freaky Deaky, and Me and You. So that's quite a bit. I would just have to say only 4 songs that remain that just, I mean, this is going to get a pretty rave score, and you'll see that as time goes along, but we're just going to kind of talk about some of these. So one of the best songs on this album is the first song that you hear, and that's American Superstar. This has a very dramatic, thrilling, kind of woozy beat on here. This is a great kind of hypnotic gem, has a real hypnotic kind of piano beat. This great Lil Wayne verse. He was tearing songs apart in 2008, and this came out just a few months before the Carter 3, so the hype was humongous for Lil Wayne in the first 6 months of 2008 before the Carter 3 came out. So Flo Rida snagged a Lil Wayne verse just to kind of whet the appetites before Lil Wayne would drop and have his Mammoth album come out, and he just nails it. I mean, this is just another classic Lil Wayne verse. Flo Rida does a good job on here. Just would have to say this is a good combination, one of the best songs on the album, definitely one of the best beats on the album too. Another highlight is Miss Hangover. This is a very bubbly commercial kind of drinking track. This is an easy kind of woozy kind of bar song. I would feel like it's just a smooth ladies track, and it's just some fun pop rap. This is basically just an extremely bubbly kind of song. It's very commercial just in the way it kind of goes about it. I just like the concept of just how much gloss that this song kind of has. This is the concept that you could tell that Flo Rida was definitely on to something just because he was crafting these songs. This feels like a song that someone would have cranked out on like their second, third album. This could almost be a single. I feel like Miss Hangover could have almost been a single. I would have almost chosen that song just as far as that kind of goes. It's an early preview of the sort of stuff that would happen with folks like 303 and LMFAO and those type folks and Pitbull, some of the stuff that they would do in 2010, 2011, some of that type of stuff. Just an easy kind of drinking highlight and bar song. Another good ladies tune on here with the great Trey Songz hook is Freaky Deaky. This is a good ladies track and a good gauzy summer malaise kind of tune. It's a great hangout kind of cut. Just would have to say it's just kind of it's a freak song. Would definitely have to say it's just a good song for just kind of hangout sessions, kind of pre-Spotify and pre-streaming session songs that you would listen to, hanging out with women, that type of stuff. As far as that kind of goes, it's an easy kind of one. Not really a club song, drinking song, party song, that type of stuff. Just pretty strictly a hangout session as far as that kind of goes. But I just look after it, just being able to say it's a good highlight. Trey Songz and Flo Rida are a good combination on here. Me and You is another nice one. This one has a Roger Troutman kind of sample on here, which Roger Troutman was the cat from Tupac's California Love. So he is deceased, but I do look after the Roger Troutman is deceased, but he did have some really excellent stuff with some good songs. He's a good cat to refer back to. He's kind of the one that T-Pain got influence from back in the day. So that's kind of the concept. But this song, Me and You, is like a syrupy kind of bickering track with women and that type of stuff. Just a great auto-tune sample on here, and it's a good caught up song with some flair on there. It's just another highlight as far as that kind of goes. There's just some good sleazy kind of ones on here that just have a lot of flair about them. Another good highlight on here is Don't Know How to Act with Young Jock. This is a leery kind of electro club hit, and Young Jock definitely enhances the song. It's too bad that he didn't drop a verse on here. I definitely think it would have been better if he had, but he does a pretty good job with the hook. And it's a glitzy kind of nightclub gem. This probably has about the same flash as Low and a little bit more club oriented than In the Air or Elevator, a little bit more of a thumper than Elevator is, but it's just kind of one that just kind of have like a stock kind of club song. It's a little bit more leery, a little bit more riveting than some of the vanilla ones that might be on here, but it is a nice one just to kind of have for like another stock one. And another stock kind of vanilla club song on here, or another stock club song on here, would be Money Right with Briscoe and Rick Ross. This is like a late night kind of jam, just an out and about, but not, it doesn't have to be just nightclub kind of jam. It can just be kind of out on the town, getting some snacks, getting like a hot dog, getting a corn dog, something like that, getting some goodies at a gas station, getting like a 2 liter, something like that. Just kind of, it's a very festive gem. Just kind of reminds me of something that you would listen to, just smoking a blunt in the backyard, something like that. Just those kind of gems. It can be residential, but it is a pretty good nightclub gem. I feel like this is just a good example of this classic late 2000s kind of fare for some nightclub music. And Rick Ross and Briscoe do a good job on here as well. This really happens to be a thing. Another one that has a pretty good pace about it is Roll with Sean Kingston. This is a good cameo for Sean Kingston. I like the fact that like Flo Rida kind of picked some folks that were kind of riveting at the time. He was a good person to kind of capitalize on folks that were just popping at the time. He got Lil Wayne in his prime, Timbaland in his prime, Sean Kingston in his prime, T-Pain in his prime, and will.i.am in his prime, and I would even almost say Young Jock in his prime too. So it's just kind of, he got some good choices as far as some of these, but Roll is just a very paced kind of evening jive of a tune. Sean Kingston has a pretty busy sounding hooks, just a very nice, lively, more alarmed kind of promo type tune. I mean, it can be kind of promo, but it just has a little bit more busy type feel towards it, a little bit more alert and just kind of more tense of a type song. It's not quite as relaxing, as comfortable as some of the other ones, but I do like the concept behind it. It's just a good club cut at that. It's kind of one or just a little bit more in motion, just a little bit more lively and just kind of more, busy and that type feels. It's kind of the concept about it, but I do like the aspect of just kind of being more on the go or just kind of more in motion as far as that kind of goes. It's a nice kind of paced kind of beat. I think that about covers all the songs. To talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy, one that just kind of had a little bit too much toot on it was Act Like You Know. That one was just a little bit too spunky. Just didn't quite pull it off quite as well. The beat was just a little bit more ferocious than it needed to be. I mean, some of these ones like Low and Roll and American Superstar and Miss Hangover and In the Air just felt a lot more comfortable and a lot more kind of just in a better, more executed aspect, but Act Like You Know is just kind of like a less kind of composed one that just didn't do quite as well. And Priceless was another one that kind of had that same fare. That one was just a little bit more dramatic and kind of almost cheesy. Just didn't like the approach towards it. I just couldn't like get into that beat as much. I mean, I do like the fact that Birdman was on here, but I just didn't see as much of effect as to how that one kind of turned out. And then to talk about the other two songs I didn't enjoy, which were Still Missing and All My Life, these were just kind of some homely songs and more down tempo songs that just didn't quite have the charm or the affability that they probably needed for an album like that. I mean, some folks can pull that off. I know I say that excuse a lot. Like Eminem is a good example, or the old Eminem and Tech Nine are some good examples of being able to do it, but just didn't really see the point of listening to these songs. They just didn't have much affluence. They were just kind of more lays around the house and just kind of not necessarily affable kind of songs that just had really much of any spark to them as far as that kind of went. So that's this kind of thing. But me liking 10 songs out of 14, I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 9.5 out of 10. Basically, just a song shy of being a 10 out of 10. I think that's pretty good. It's to say I like that many. It was just a whopping kind of album. There's plenty of pro kind of stuff on here. Excellent debut, just out of nowhere. Like pretty much like just 3, 4, 5 months before this album came out, most people, like including myself, didn't really even know about Flo Rida that well. He just kind of took the world by storm, lasted for a good 7, 8 years, and then went back to vanishing. It's just kind of the concept. But this is just a great debut, and this really did some things right, and this really had a stellar kind of promotion cycle for how it did, despite the fact that In the Air and Elevator kind of got overlooked just because of the sheer quality of Low. This really happens to be a thing. But the social score, I'm going to give the social score a 10 out of 10. Just that many songs, this perfect little album, perfect 2000s, late 2000s album for nightlife and that type of stuff. Just chock full of club hits, chock full of nightlife, bar hits, ladies songs, that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. Just great kind of affability just for stepping out and just having an overall time. It barely feels like this album was a 2000s album because it just did so many new tricks that were unlike the stuff that was kind of happening prior to that. This is just a real more refurbished kind of album than stuff that was kind of happening prior. This was kind of almost like a page turner of an album in a lot of ways. It wasn't quite EDM prone like Flo Rida's later stuff, but it was definitely one that was initiating that stuff and being a conduit for it. So I applaud that. Definite 10 social. In terms of the future, like Flo Rida has been quiet since My House, the EP from 2015. So it's been a while. It's been over 8 years. It's too bad about that. I'd like to get some more Flo Rida, but I'm definitely going to review some more of these. But this is a pretty excellent debut. Just know that.